Good morning, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. We continue to track rounds of severe weather across the central and eastern United States. It's been a very active August so far. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Here's a look at where our threats are today. We're going to be watching a complex of storms in Tennessee move across the Carolinas and southern Virginia, and that could produce a few tornadoes with it, certainly some damaging wind with it as well. Another area to keep an eye on is the deep south. On the tail end of this disturbance, we're going to potentially have some more severe weather. And then we turn our focus to the upper Midwest and the plains, where another storm system is getting set to trigger severe weather. And that's going to be spreading eastward towards the end of the week and this weekend into the Great Lakes region and eventually into the eastern United States, where we only get a couple of days to catch our breath before things get active again. Here's a look at where the severe weather was yesterday, and you can see we did have an enhanced risk, but things didn't quite go off the way that they could have. And, every now and then we have a day where things have a very high ceiling, but we just don't reach our potential. I think we could say that about ourselves, where we've got ourselves set on a huge day, but things maybe don't go right. Well, that was the case yesterday here in the South with the atmosphere. It tried, but it just couldn't make things click, except in a few places across the Ozarks and across parts of the Dixie area. But as we continue to track that complex east today, there's definitely some potential for things to get nasty here across the Carolinas, parts of the deep south, again today, lower Tennessee Valley. And then here's our next system. You can see it on the water vapor image spinning across Wyoming and Montana. That is going to fire storms off this evening across the upper Midwest, and we have to track that one eastward across the Great Lakes tomorrow and into parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region as we head towards the weekend. So we may get a little bit of a lull here in the weather, but it is going to again return to more active weather. Right now, the main focus is on storms that are tracking across East Tennessee and northern Georgia and Alabama. Not a lot of severe weather at this hour. Of course, this is 6 a.m. Eastern that I'm cutting this video, but as the morning wears on and then again this afternoon, storms are set to refire on the outflow of this boundary left behind by this system. And when there's more heating and there will be some instability here, then we do have to keep an eye on storms that could again turn severe. The Northeast will be wet today, but we're not looking at widespread severe weather. Keep an eye, though, on southern New England. Later on, we could see a few gustier storms. And then here's our next system. It doesn't look like a lot on radar at this point, but as the day wears on, we're going to see cooling aloft and more intense storms getting ready to flare up across this region. Here's a look at the simulated satellite today, and you can see our complex moving through the Carolinas this morning, flaring up very quickly over eastern North Carolina. See, there's another wave that tries to blow up here this afternoon across the Midlands of South Carolina, and then additional storms try to get going across Mississippi. And then we're going to watch this area to the north. As we roll the satellite along, you can see active weather expected this evening between 6 and 10 o'clock over the plains. We may see additional flare-ups here over parts of the southeast, and it could get stormy on the east coast of Florida as well later this afternoon into the evening. So while it doesn't look like a lot, we certainly continue to see a very progressive active pattern. And you can see that by these brighter cloud tops that just get going here. This is tomorrow night. More storms over the central part of the country, and we see complex after complex of storms. As these accelerate, as we will have some faster wind flow aloft than what you would expect in August, then we likely see more widespread severe weather. This is heading into Saturday, and you can see parts of the Tennessee Valley and the Ohio Valley could be under the gun. So a very active stretch of weather going on here. And we have two areas to monitor today under a slight risk, one across the eastern and central Carolinas, the other across the Missouri Valley from Omaha on up into North Dakota. And these areas could shift around as we get into later forecasts today, depending on what happens with this complex. You can see there's even a marginal risk up to Boston and eastern Long Island, marginal risk back into Mississippi, and then across Kentucky. Here's a look at tomorrow. We see a slight risk advancing eastward into the upper Mississippi Valley, into Wisconsin, even to about Chicago, and a marginal risk across the Gulf states here into the low country of South Carolina. And then we see more active weather across the Ohio Valley here and maybe the lower Great Lakes into the Northeast for the day on Saturday. That's not it. As we get into Sunday, we could have active weather on the East Coast, but the next storm here is going to bring us active weather across the midsection of the country on Sunday. And that will advance eastward Monday. And this looks a lot like the area last Monday that was under the gun, I'm not saying we're going to see an exact repeat, but it is going to be active again. So again, we have a stormy start to yet another week as kids go back to school in some of these areas here. So be prepared for that. Here's a look at today, and I'm going to zoom in and show you that we do have a 5% chance of tornadoes later today across eastern North Carolina, and a 2% chance over the Tidewater down to the Triangle and back towards Charlotte and even Columbia and down to Wilmington. So there could be a few tornadoes in this area. A bigger threat, though, for damaging wind across this entire region. And that's going to start this morning over the Piedmont areas and the foothills, and then advance eastward into the coastal plain for the afternoon. And there could be some hail as well over eastern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia. We tomorrow take an eye on, or take a shift southward, where we do have a marginal risk for severe weather. And at this point, not really a tornado threat, but we could see some damaging downbursts from Meridian, Mississippi to about Mobile and eastward to South Georgia, and all the way up to Columbia, Atlanta, and Birmingham, right along the Interstate 20 corridor. And then as we get to day 3, and I will show you that in just a second, that threat ends in the southeast. We do have a risk for some tornadoes tonight across the Dakotas into Minnesota, a bigger chance for severe wind all the way down into Kansas, and a chance for some hail here as well. Nothing hatched at this point, but definitely keep an eye on things in Wyoming and Colorado, maybe for some hail. Tomorrow, you could see a pretty big wind threat advancing into the Great Lakes and all the way down into northern parts of Missouri by the evening. There could be some hail with these storms as well, 5% chance down to Topeka. And then as we head into Saturday, we see the area of severe weather extends along the Ohio River and then on northward towards Columbus and even as far north as Akron, and a 5% chance into parts of Pennsylvania and New York. We'll also keep an eye here on the southern Great Plains. As we head to the day on Sunday, we have to watch our next progressive system. Fast wind flow aloft, instability, all leading to a chance for severe wind, maybe a few tornadoes once again. This hasn't been a super active year for tornadoes. It was a busy start over the southern U.S. and then certainly March and April across the plains. But since then, we've been mainly talking lower amounts of wind shear, but higher amounts of winds aloft. So a lot of wind damage. And in many cases, those affect bigger areas than tornadoes. Tornadoes are kind of a microcosm of these areas of straight line winds. So nonetheless, it's been a very destructive year, and you can ask folks in Mississippi and Arkansas about that. And I think we're going to continue to see that heading into the fall here. Just very strong winds aloft, El Nino taking over. That certainly enhances the jet stream coming in and leads to active weather. And here's kind of a picture of the 700 millibar, and you can see on the GFS model, we have an area that has enhanced wind flow aloft up to about 65 to maybe 70 knots moving across eastern North Carolina. The winds aloft, 200 millibars at the high levels, aren't as strong, but you get to the mid levels and they are. So that could certainly keep our complex going and lead to some severe weather. And then we've got more to keep an eye on here this weekend. You can see our next system aloft advancing into this area Saturday. Not quite as intense, but certainly it's there. And then as we get to early next week, keep an eye on the Ohio River Valley. And then these fast winds that are moving through here are going to likely trigger severe weather Monday across the same places that got hit this past Monday. So stay tuned on that. We'll have updates in the coming days. A look at the Northeast shows mainly just some heavier rain and storms, not really anything severe at this point, at least not, I don't think there will be anything severe, but we'll have to keep an eye on things this evening over Long Island and southern parts of New England between about 5 o'clock and about 10 o'clock. And then that'll track eastward and up the coast here tonight into Maine, and eventually into New Brunswick tomorrow morning. So some heavy rain expected here. Then we get a break tomorrow for the most part. And then our next system starts bringing in some warm advection showers and storms early in the day on Saturday into Western PA and New York. But the bigger storms are likely going to be moving in later Sunday and into the day Monday. Stay tuned for that. In the Midwest, we are going to start seeing more active weather here later on heading into this evening. You can see storms rolling out of the Dakotas tonight around 8, 9 o'clock Central, and then continuing into Minnesota and Iowa overnight tonight. And then tomorrow, those could get friskier as we get into parts of Illinois and Indiana, depending on the timing of these. I do think Michigan and eastern Wisconsin need to watch out late in the day tomorrow, especially lower Michigan and maybe central Illinois tomorrow night. So keep an eye on that area. And then we'll see additional storms rounding the base of the trough Saturday, but most of that weather is going to hold off till later on towards the evening hours. Here's a look at today, and you can see the active weather moving across the Tennessee Valley into the Carolinas this morning. And then additional storms are flaring up with the heating of the day. We're not done after that, though. Additional complexes are tracking through the area Friday. Alabama, Georgia, and upstate South Carolina could see some stronger storms. Those will move into South Georgia and North Florida here tomorrow night. And then quieter weather expected in the Carolinas on Saturday, except for eastern North Carolina. But we do have a boundary here, so I think we'll see more rough weather heading into later Saturday. Taking a look at Michigan, doesn't look like a lot today, but as we get into tomorrow, we start to see some heavier showers and storms moving through. And keep an eye on things in southwest Michigan. There's a little bit of wind shear here. We could see some hail and some strong winds moving right across the area from Grand Rapids and Jackson and Lansing on eastward towards Detroit. And maybe a second wave right behind that late in the evening. So keep an eye on Michigan here. I do think the worst weather is going to end up farther south, though. You can see pretty quiet as we head into today, maybe a few pop-ups around the Chicagoland area, but they're going to be relatively light compared if you trust the NAM model here. But later on overnight into early tomorrow, we could see some stronger storms moving into central Illinois. And then additional storms are going to track across central and southern Illinois and Indiana tomorrow night. I think the bigger day, though, is going to be on Saturday and into Sunday as well. Missouri is going to see some action as well. We kind of got clipped hard in the southern part of the state yesterday, but kind of avoided the worst of it in St. Louis, fortunately. I don't think today is really going to be too big a deal, but as we get to tomorrow night, keep an eye on the St. Louis area. And then overnight, another complex of slow-moving heavy storms, which could produce some flooding over central Missouri early in the day on Saturday, and that will head east and southeast across the same places that have been getting stormed on over the last several weeks. Looking at the Tennessee Valley, we're going to see heavy storms moving away from East Tennessee this morning. Then we get a break, but we see more development along I-40 here west of Nashville late tonight into tomorrow morning. And for the most part, everything's going to be tracking across the southern parts of these states right on through tomorrow. As we head towards the weekend, though, more storms across Kentucky moving in from the west around lunchtime around Paducah, and then in the early afternoon heading towards Clarksville, Paris, Prairie, Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, and Louisville early in the afternoon Saturday. Farther south and east, we do have to keep an eye on the Carolinas this morning. As these storms roll out of the mountains around mid-morning, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, there could be some rotation and a slight chance for a few tornadoes around the Lake Norman area once again. We saw that on Monday. We could see something kind of similar today, although at a smaller scale. As we head into the afternoon, most of these storms are moving away, and we have to keep an eye on eastern North Carolina. However, there is modeling that shows some redevelopment behind the main area storms late in the afternoon today into the early evening, and a few of these storms could pulse up to become severe again. There is strong enough wind flow to support that. So if you're in the Raleigh area, Jacksonville, Greenville, Virginia Beach, just know that while we may get stormed on later this morning around lunchtime even, we may not be done until later this evening. Now we get a break, and then tomorrow night, interestingly, I think we could see some stronger storms over upstate South Carolina, and then maybe firing up around Charlotte and Asheboro later tomorrow evening around 9, 10 o'clock. Keep an eye on this. We could have some rough weather later tomorrow night if this run of the NAM is correct. There's a bit of a disturbance in the mid-levels tracking through. But once that's through, I think we're going to have some pretty good weather on Saturday for most of this area. Looking farther south into South Carolina and especially Georgia, we see pretty quiet weather returning later today, but some storms move in tomorrow from the west. Tomorrow evening could be pretty rough across this entire region as things advance quickly south and east and then die off as we lose the heating of the day. But even at the beaches, we could see some late night action tomorrow night, maybe even first thing on Saturday in Charleston. And the deep south is going to see some storms again. Mississippi here this afternoon, tracking into Alabama and weakening tonight. More showers and storms overnight, moving towards Birmingham, Gadsden, and the I-59 corridor. And some of these could produce locally strong wind. And then we see another wave coming through tomorrow afternoon, and we could see localized severe weather with that. And I'm going to expect that Saturday will turn unsettled later in the afternoon here as well. Here's a look at updraft helicity, and you can see there's still some rotation up there, still some stronger winds aloft, nothing really widespread, but we could see a few pulse stronger storms as the NAM hints that there will be some of those here around lunchtime tomorrow and then in the afternoon in Alabama and Georgia. And then a break, and then we may see some more rough weather coming into Tennessee here on Saturday. We'll look farther east, and we see there's going to be some helicity here, updrafts. Some of them could produce a few tornadoes and strong winds, especially over eastern North Carolina here. This is 6, 7 o'clock tonight. And then we see a break, and then maybe a few across Georgia and South Carolina late tomorrow. And keep an eye on central North Carolina here tomorrow evening as storms track eastward tomorrow night across this region. Look at the upper Midwest, and we can see there will be some storms to keep an eye on across Minnesota and Iowa here overnight tonight, tracking towards Wisconsin and Illinois tomorrow. And then keep an eye on Michigan. You can see there is some enhancement here, a little bit more wind flow aloft. We could see a brief tornado or some strong winds here tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. And then more active weather is expected to form here towards Saturday. Here's a look at strong winds that could move across the western Carolinas this morning as winds gust in excess of 60 miles per hour. These are going to track east and weaken some, but you can see there's still some potential for some powerful winds somewhere here in the central and eastern Carolinas later today, as well as across central Georgia, heading into the low country of South Carolina this evening. But again, just one model. In the Atlantic, we're still quiet. We're waiting on our next storm. We may wait at least a couple more weeks. There is a flare up north of Hispaniola, but too much wind shear out of the west here. That's going to keep anything from popping up. You can see an upper low east of the islands here. That is bringing strong enough wind shear to keep anything down in here from sustaining itself. So the monsoon trough is very quiet. Now, we do have to keep an eye on things coming off of Africa, but chances are they're not going to develop. If you look at the European ensemble, just a very low chance of any kind of development next week into next weekend. Really, all the actions in the Pacific. And those of you who may be following from Hawaii, we saw some really nasty wildfires on the western side of Maui. A lot of the island has been burning up quickly, and a lot of that was due to strong easterly winds that came across the islands in the gradient between a strong high pressure system north of the islands and strong Hurricane Dora, which came by well south. In between the two, we had fast winds of 50 miles per hour, and it's been a pretty dry couple of months in Hawaii. So unfortunately, Maui is in shambles at this point due to the strong winds. Now, they're going to weaken some, but we're still going to see dry conditions. Hurricane Dora is finally starting to feel a little bit of the effects of some wind shear and cooler waters out ahead of it, though still a pretty intense storm. Winds are at 140 miles per hour, Category 4 hurricane. It's cycling back and forth. It should stay a major hurricane through tomorrow and then weaken to a Category 1 hurricane by Sunday morning and a tropical storm. And as this crosses the date line here, 180 east, and that would be tomorrow afternoon and evening, it will be reclassified as a typhoon, as if we need another one of those in the Western Pacific. This is Khanun, which finally made landfall in South Korea here, just to the west of Busan. This was landfall earlier today, and the storm has weakened, fortunately, and you can see just a quick moving tropical storm moving right across South Korea and heading into North Korea. It'll be gone here by the weekend. Here's a look at the forecast tracks and making a bend back to the left through North Korea. The next storm of concern is going to be a threat for Japan. We now have Typhoon Lan. Winds are over 80 miles per hour. An eye is formed. And you can see there's some dry air in the way of it. It's been very hot across Japan this month. But we are expecting intensification with winds up to over 100 miles per hour as it moves in the general direction of central Japan. Landfall is expected to the west of Tokyo near Shizuoka. And that's going to be sometime here on Monday afternoon or evening, Japan time, as a typhoon. So going right through the center of Honshu, still a potential. If it comes up this way, it could be very bad for Tokyo. Possibly could shift west and be more of a threat to Osaka or Nagoya. But millions of people are in the path of this, and it is going to be a dangerous typhoon, at least a Category 2, as it's making aim at Japan. So keep tuned for the latest on land. The Western Pacific is getting all the action this month, as you would expect in an El Nino. And my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in Korea, Japan, and all the other places in the path of these storms. Very scary situation if you're out there. Even though they are used to them, it doesn't matter. It's like saying Florida's used to hurricanes, and we are, but we're not. So I appreciate y'all's time today. Please be safe. Have a wonderful Thursday. Thank you for your time. And please consider subscribing if you would like the latest. I am a meteorologist. I also am a Christian man. And I do want to end my video giving all the glory to God, as I do every day. It's tough getting out of bed early, day after day after day, when you're working hard for your family, your employer. But I know that God has called me to do this, and he expects me to use my gift and my calling to share with you guys that I can't do this without God. We were all created by God, and through his son, Jesus Christ, we can live eternally. And that's just the reason why I continue to do what I do. I know not all of you are going to believe that, And if you are tuning me out because of that, look, I understand. It's really, I'm not here to please you. I'm here to please God. And I'm here to be humble. And James 4:10 says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judgeth his brother speaketh evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, and thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. I have to remind myself that every day, that the Lord expects us to not bash each other, but to have the spirit of courage and the spirit of humility, and realizing that the Lord is going to uplift us if we turn our eyes to him, rather than sitting there and criticizing each other, no matter what we believe. And if you're a Muslim or a Jew or a non-believer, it is not up to me to speak evil of you because I don't agree with you. In fact, I pray over people like you all the time. I was not a Christian until I was 30 years old. I'm 41 now, and I was the person that would speak evil about other people and use, disgusting language, and just not have the heart of somebody who wants to uplift other people. Thank the Lord, though, that the door opened for me to become a Christian. I started studying the Bible. I started looking at my purpose in life, and I realized that I was just not staying humble. Instead, I was very discouraging the people. I was not uplifted. But it took some time. It took getting around people that were lifting me up to realize that there's just so much more that I can do here in my short time on earth. And I pray that you are in a position like that, where you're like, maybe I'm discouraged, but maybe there is an answer for me. And so I will pray for you. Feel free to list prayers in the comments here if you want me to pray for you. I'm happy to do that. But realize that we have to stay humble, and we need to encourage each other and not speak evil of each other. Nobody wants to be in a divided, fallen world. Despite what you see out there, people that disagree with each other, nobody wants that. I mean, do we all really want the world to end? There will be a day when Jesus does come again, and I think you're going to have to make that choice sooner than later. If you wait too long, then you may miss your chance. So I just wanted to encourage you all today and let you know what was on my mind. And that is, of course, the Lord and Jesus Christ, my Savior. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and we'll chat again tomorrow morning. Have a blessed day. See ya.